Hello, it's Ryan from 2minutetennis.net, and in this video, I'm going to test your ability to be a coach and notice 5 common forehand mistakes. Now, there is no right or wrong way to hit a tennis ball. There are just more efficient ways and less efficient ways and techniques. So I'm going to test you in your ability to notice 5 common mistakes. I'm going to demonstrate 5 mistakes that I see on a daily basis at the tennis club where I coach and with my students who come in who are looking to improve. So let's get right to it. Mistake number 1. I'm going to demonstrate it from all directions. This is going to be pretty easy, right? We're going to start easy and then we're going to get a little harder as we go. But I also want to make sure that you're noticing these things in my technique so you can start noticing it if you're a coach and your players, if you're a parent and your child, and in your own game when you film yourself and review the footage. All right, let's get right to it. Mistake number 1. Tell me the mistake that you see. That's easy, right? You would be shocked how many people hit balls like this. Of course, super easy, right? Stopping the racket at or just after contact. Think about a race, right? When you're running and there's a sprint and you're trying to get to the finish line, you don't want to stop on the finish line. Why? Because you have to slow down before you ever get there. You want to be going as fast as you can in that race and going through the finish line. Well, the contact is kind of like that. The contact is the finish line. It's when you win or lose the race, right? So when you get to the ball, which is the finish line, you want to go right through the finish line. What I recommend is that the players let the racket go up over their shoulder, in most cases, catching the racket the way you see Venus and Serena, Dominic Thiem, when he's practicing forehands, he always catches the racket. I love that about his forehand. So make sure with your students, with your child, if you're a parent who watches your child play a lot of tennis, and in your own game, be sure that you're not slowing your racket down as you strike the ball. You're not going to get enough racket speed to impart the spin you need to truly control the ball. So that was an easy one. All right, mistake number 2. It's going to get gradually harder as we go. These are really common. You'd be shocked if you just watch tennis players all day. You'd be like, oh my gosh, they're almost all doing all 5 of these ideas. All right, here we go. Mistake number 2. And you might see more than one mistake, but I'm talking about the big one, right? See it? The inefficiency or the mistake was that my racket went low to high and then low to high again. I should only go low one time. When you take your racket back, it's best to go up initially, and that way you can do high, low, high. In the demonstration I just had, my racket was going down and then back up, and then down and back up again, almost like a pendulum. That's not what you want. You want a C swing. You want a circular swing. C as in the letter C. So when you take your racket back, take it back high with both hands. Make sure that when you look at your child, if you look at your spouse who's learning to play your own game, that you're not letting the racket go down initially, but that the racket should go slightly up with both hands. When the racket goes up and around, you get effortless power, racket speed, and you get to allocate that racket speed into both the ball speed and the ball rotation. All right, that was pretty easy as well. This one's a little more difficult, but I think you'll get it. I got a smart audience, so you'll be able to see this. Ready? Now I'm going to demonstrate some things here, and you got to use the clues that I show you to try to figure out what the mistake is. You'd be shocked how many players do this. You see the mistake? Watch it again. So I used the split step right here to tell you when my opponent hit the ball. So when the opponent hits the ball, and then I'm watching the ball come toward me, in my demonstration, I split stepped, I watched the ball and I started rotating my body a little bit, but my racket stayed in one place. It stayed in the ready position. Then I watched the ball bounce, and then when the ball bounced It was almost like, finally, I have permission to take my racket back. So many players wait for the ball to bounce to take their racket back. The ball travels 70 feet, and then now the ball only has 8 feet to get to you, and then we're rushing. We're going to use that time that we see the ball on its way to us before it bounces to take a nice early efficient take back. Many players, and you might actually be making this mistake, wondering why you struggle against harder hitters. Many players wait for the ball to bounce. Now they have to rush the swing, and they can never make any changes in their technique because they're just so frantically late that they just got to step on the gas and hit the ball. And those are also the players who struggle hitting slowly and hitting easy and hitting lobs with touch and even drop shots because they're so late by the time the ball bounces, especially deep balls and or fastballs, that their swing is so fast because it's almost like being late in the morning and you got to drive fast to work. When you're late and you got to go fast, it doesn't allow you for touch and skill and the nuance of the game. It's only just frantic power. So as soon as you split step, and you can watch the pros do this, as soon as you split step, begin the take back. You don't want to be in the ready position when the ball is on its way. The moment the ball comes off your opponent's racket, you've been given a task. It's either a backhand or a forehand. Once you've been given that task, then begin, and because you're early, like leaving your house early for work, you get to drive slowly and take your time. This is why very high-level players seem to have all the time in the world. It's because they use all the time that they're given rather than rushing at the end. As soon as you split step, begin the turn. We talked about turning up with both hands. We'll do it early so you can take your time, and then you'll speed up at the end. The players don't have this late release the way we think. Yes, can you find some examples like a Steffi Graf who sometimes swung pretty late? Sure, but we can always find the exceptions to the rule. Let's just follow the broad rule, especially because we are not as athletic as Steffi Graf and the Roger Federers and of the world. So we got to give ourselves the best chance. So as soon as you split step, begin the take back. Take the racket back with both hands and hit. All right, now we're going to get a little more difficult. You ready? Problem number 4, and I'm going to show you this from multiple angles because you're going to need to see it from multiple angles to get this. All right, here we go. Again, you might see more than one mistake. Show it from the side. Show it from the back. Do you see it? This is more difficult. All right. Here's the mistake I was showing. I'll say the inefficiency I was showing you. When my racket was dropping, it was dropping on edge. You don't want your racket on edge at the bottom of the swing when you're trying to hit a topspin forehand. Here's the reason. And watch the pros. They close the racket face. Here's the reason. When your racket is on edge in the back, and then you swing up to try to hit the ball with topspin, topspin, we're going from low to high, we're spinning that ball, we're buttering the bread, right? We're going from below to above. We're not smashing it, we're going from below to above. The way you do that is by getting your racket to face your target as you're going from low to high. Well, if your racket is straight up and down in the back, it'll be open by the time you hit the ball. And that's why beginners hit the ball over the fence. I mean, if you see a bunch of beginners, like literally they've never played tennis before, ever. This is their first time playing tennis. And I get those people every month who come in and say, I've never played tennis in my life, but my friends are having fun with it, so I wanted to come in. And you start feeding them balls, they turn, and their brain says, okay, I want my racket to be flat when I hit the ball. So they decide it makes sense. Their brain says, well, let's set it up with the racket straight up and down in the back. Well, the way our arm works, anatomically, the palm will then face open by the time they make contact. and they'll hit the ball out, and that's actually one of the reasons why they stop at contact. Beginners do that because they're trying to slow the swing down, problem number one, and then the ball goes out. So to fix that and fix the racket face that's open, instead of doing what most people do is they get to the ball and they think, you know what, I'm going to turn the racket. And that's when they get this feeling like they're rolling over the ball for topspin, which you can't do, it's impossible. So what you want to do to fix that problem is tilt the strings down prior to hitting the ball. Since an on-edge racket, on-edge meaning you could balance a coin on the frame, since an on-edge racket will be open by the time you hit the ball, a closed racket will be facing forward or nearly forward by the time you contact the ball. That's how you fix a ball that keeps going over the fence, especially if you're teaching beginners. You get them to point their strings down prior to hitting and then keep that wrist angle and feel like their strings are facing down the whole time as they swing up. So watch the difference. I'll show you from the back. I turn up. Now watch my strings close. Now I can brush up the back of the ball. Turn high, close the racket. Now I can swing up the back of the ball. All right, did you get that one? That was a little harder. Here's the last one. This is one of the most common mistakes I see. If you know the United States NTRP level rating system, this is probably the most common mistake across the board from the 3-5 and below crowd, right? The 3.5 tennis player and below, the average recreational player and below. Ready? Here we go. See if you know this one. This is hard to see. Wait, I got to actually get it right. So you can probably see that there's a problem. But what is causing it? What is causing the problem? Because many times players can see a problem, or coaches, or parents, but they don't know what it stems from. All right. So the mistake was that my non-hitting hand, as I was hitting the ball, was dropping. Watch this. When you watch high-level players, they do one of two things, and they usually do both. High-level players, and I'm talking Azarenka, Federer, right? We're talking about the best players in the world. Serena. They have their non-hitting hand rising as they are hitting the ball. So here's my non-hitting hand. The non-hitting hand is rising. You won't see high-level players, even the best players at a tennis club, the 5.0 level players, maybe like the 9 UTRs and higher, you won't see them dropping their non-hitting hand. But most beginners and intermediate club players drop the non-hitting hand. And the reason this is a problem is because it becomes a counterweight. Your racket is trying to swing forward, but as your non-hitting hand drops, you end up hugging yourself. And when you drop this arm, there's a swing action going this way, and this arm goes this way. You hug yourself, and you can't turn your hips because your body doesn't know who to listen to, right? Does the body listen to the swing going forward so that it rotates? Or should the body listen to this arm going backward so the body can't twist? It's kind of like when you hit a one-handed backhand and your arms go apart, which keeps your body sideways during contact because they're going in opposite directions so the body can't rotate. It's the same thing on the forehand. If the arms are going in opposite directions, which is what occurs when your non-hitting hand drops, then you can't turn your hips. You can get impingement in the shoulder. So the key is to practice waving to your opponent as you are hitting the ball. So this is what I have my students do. I have them turn with both hands, then wave to the opponent and wave about head level, like the top of their head, and then catch. When you watch the best players in the world, their hand, as I mentioned, is either rising as they're hitting the ball. You look at Del Potro, his hand is rising. You look at Azarenka, her hand is rising. Serena, same thing. Federer, his hand rises slightly before contact. They either have their hand rising or it's above contact. It's one of the two, or it's both, right? The higher the contact, then the non-hitting hand is level to the contact, but it is rising as they get there because they don't want it to drop. Once it drops, then they hug themselves. If you've ever seen somebody hit forehands, or if you know that you do this and you hug yourself as you hit forehands and your coach says, no, you got to turn, you got to turn. Well, if you're dropping this arm, you're not going to be able to turn. So you want to practice raising this hand. One drill you can do is put both hands on either side of the racket and just practice doing this. And that just pushes the left hand, if you're right-handed, out of the way. So you start doing this. It just gives you the feeling that you have to keep both arms going kind of in the same direction, like you got a pail of water and you're dousing a fire. That was a lot of fun to make. This video was a lot of fun. I hope that you got a lot of value, and I hope you got all 5 right. One thing I want to tell you, and not a lot of players know this, I do private Zoom lessons. So I teach at a tennis club outside of Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, but I also do private Zoom lessons where no matter where you are in the world, go to 2minutetennis.net, my website, put it right here, and book a private Zoom lesson with me. This is where you send me videos of your technique, and I'm going to put you side by side with a pro tennis player. It's going to be private, right? No one else sees this. And you and I go live on Zoom, and I put you side by side. Let's say you're working on your serve, and I put you next to Serena, or I put you next to Osaka, or I put you next to Federer, or Djokovic, or Isner. Let's say you're working on your backhand, and I show you Agassi, or I show you Djokovic. Let's say you're working on your forehand, and I show you Djokovic, or I show you Kyrgios. I can show you side by side what you're doing and what the best players in the world are doing, and the things. You can't copy really everything that they do and play your best tennis, but we can copy really the building blocks that make pro tennis players and pro technique so good. So make sure that you go to 2minutetennis.net if you would like me to personally fix your technique once and for all. Book a session with me. You can schedule it right there on the website. You get my schedule and you can choose a time that's convenient for you. But I do about 3 of those per week, and the results are out of this world. I give a money-back guarantee with these private Zoom lessons. And in fact, I've never had anyone ask for their money back. In fact, everyone always buys another because they are shocked at the results that they're getting, even more than an in-person lesson that they're receiving at their local courts. So this is Ryan Reedy over at 2minutetennis.net, and you got this.